Hello lads and lasses, welcome to the Reading SAT tutorials. In this video, I'll be going over domain 3, which is expression of ideas. You can type in the link at the top of the screen for the slides, but I'll also leave it in the description. Real quick, there are also QR codes to different resources you can use. Of course, the questions and answer key are on the left, and there's also some notes that I typed up. Let's go ahead and get started. These are the topics that we'll be going over. Here's how the slides will work. Questions marked with a cow are ones you can try out yourself. Since this is online, I'll obviously be going through every single question. Feel free to follow along or try some out on your own. Here we go with our first topic and question. This is a rhetorical synthesis question. When I downloaded this, it came out a little bit weird, but you'll be able to tell on the actual test because there will be bullet points. Of course, they disappeared here, but that's what it would look like, the bullet points and all of the yap that comes after. If you take a quick look at the notes, of course, I do explain how to answer these questions, but I don't feel like reading that, so I'll just explain it as I go. The first thing you want to do is find the task. What do they want you to do? That will always be the first sentence right here. Right below all the bullet points, it's gonna be the first sentence. The task is, they want us to introduce this person's book to an audience already familiar with the Atlantic Monthly. So our answer will need to do two things. The first thing it needs to do is describe the book. The second thing it needs to do is not describe the Atlantic Monthly. The audience is already familiar with it, so you don't need to go yapping on about what the Atlantic Monthly is. Now that we know our task, the next thing you want to do is go straight to the answer choices. You don't want to read any of these bullet points because the answer choices are literally the exact same thing. Save yourself some time, skip the bullet points, just read the answer choices. Let's go ahead and get started with A. This person's book, Fairway Woman and the Atlantic Monthly, discusses female authors whose autobiographies appeared in the magazine in the early 1900s. Here's the name of the book, and then they describe what the book is about. And of course, our second part, they did not describe the magazine at all. That satisfies both parts of our task, so A will be our answer. Now let's go through the rest of the answer choices, and I'll explain to you why they're wrong. B. A magazine called the Atlantic Monthly, referred to in this person's book, was first published in 1857. Here they do two things wrong. The first thing is, they don't explain what the book is about. All they say is that the magazine was referenced in the book title, but they don't even tell what the book is about. So they already failed the first part. And then the second thing that's wrong is that they explain what the magazine is about. Well, they don't explain what it's about, but they say that the magazine was first published in 1857. They failed the second part of the task. We don't need to describe what the Atlantic Monthly is. That's why B would be wrong. Let's look at C. This person's book features contributors to the Atlantic Monthly, first published in 1857 as a magazine focusing on politics, art, and literature. This answer choice fails the second part of the task. It explains what the Atlantic Monthly is about. It's a magazine focusing on all of that. But of course, our audience would already be familiar with that. We don't need to go explaining that to them. That's why C would be wrong. Now let's look at D. An author discussed by this person is this person whose autobiography appeared in the Atlantic Monthly in the early 1900s. This answer choice failed the first part of the task. It doesn't even mention the book's name. D is gonna be wrong. That's why it is correct. It explains the book without explaining the magazine. That satisfies both parts of the task. Slide number 6. Let's find out what our task is. It's the first sentence right here, and it's gonna be, explain how the House of Wisdom preserved the world's knowledge. Now that we know our task, let's start going through our answer choices without even looking at any of the bullet points. A. The House of Wisdom was known for bringing together knowledge from around the world, including Greece, India, and China. This answer will be wrong. I mean, it tells us that it brings together knowledge, but it doesn't tell us how it preserved that knowledge. How did it keep that knowledge that it brought together? That's why A will be wrong. Now let's look at B. Founded in Iraq in the 8th century, the House of Wisdom employed many scholars as translators. Cool, we know when and where it was founded and who worked there. How did they preserve the knowledge? It still doesn't answer the question, so B will be wrong. C. Writings from the Greek philosopher Aristotle and the Indian mathematician, that guy, were preserved at the House of Wisdom. Thanks for telling me that the knowledge was preserved. How was it preserved? It doesn't answer the question, so C will be wrong. Obviously D will be our answer because it's the only one left, but let's go ahead and check it. The House of Wisdom collected writings from different countries and created paper versions in Arabic to be studied and shared. There you go. This right here explains how the knowledge was preserved. They translated it to a different language, created paper versions of it, and that way it could be studied and shared. That's why D would be our answer. Slide number 7. Let's look at our task. It's gonna be right here, and they want us to summarize the study's findings. This time it's a little bit different. They want us to summarize something. You would think that you would probably need to actually read the bullet points now if you want to know how to effectively summarize something. But of course, your glorious humble king will show you that still, you don't even need to read any of this. You can still just skip straight to the answer choices. Let's start off with A. To arrive at these findings, which describe dual methods of processing smells in the piriform cortex, these two people devised a study using mathematical models. This answer is gonna be wrong. The task is to summarize the findings of the study. But in answer choice A, they talk about how they got to the findings. They talked about what they used to get those findings, not about what they actually found. That's why A would be wrong. By the way, if this comes up in the future, how a person arrived at the findings, that's called the methodology, the method they used. B. These two people showed that olfactory information is captured by cells in the piriform cortex where the perception of odor forms. This answer is also gonna be wrong. They just showed a fact about how the olfactory system works. It's not what their specific findings are, but just a description of what we already know. That's why B would be wrong. But of course, this is a little bit funky because since they showed something, that means it's not the findings. It might be a little hard for you to come to that conclusion. So in this case, that is where it would make sense to go back and look at the bullet points and see, is this what they actually found or is this something we already know? Anyways, B is not going to be our answer. Let's look at C. Using mathematical models, these two people devised a study to better understand the workings of the brain's olfactory system. It talks about why they did that study, because they wanted to understand something. It doesn't talk about what they actually found, so C isn't going to be our answer. That leaves D as our only answer, but let's go ahead and read it and see if it would make sense. According to these two people, that is a dead giveaway. According to these two people means that this information is accredited to them. This information is what they found, and that's why we're citing them as the source. And then if you keep reading, the brain can toggle between all that blap. That is the findings. So that's why D would be our answer. Alright, that took a whole bunch of logic to find out our answer, but if you did want to read the bullet points, I guess, you would notice that it straight up says, they found. I think you know what the findings are. It's that certain fibers allow the brain to toggle from one method of processing to another. And then if you look at answer choice D, it talks about how the brain can toggle. So, I guess in this case, it would be faster to read the bullet points. Who knows? I always like to just skip them, but it's always up to you, of course. Now we're moving on into our next and final topic because domain 3 also only has 2 topics. Let's get started with slide number 9. These are going to be transition questions, and of course, I do explain how to answer them right here. Now I don't feel like reading all of this, so of course I'll explain it as we go, but there is something important that we need to get out of this, and it's gonna be this list of transition words. These are basically every single transition word you could ever see on the SAT. Well, there are some that aren't included, but most of them. And they're also grouped by category. Now a trick is that if 2 transition words are in the same category, you can't get rid of the both of them. So let's say in a question, you had an answer choice that had in addition and another one that had additionally. Both of these are addition transition words, so that means you can instantly cross both of these out. They both do the exact same job. None of them do it better than the other, so you wouldn't be able to choose between them if it came down to it. That means the answer is honestly gonna be neither of them. Let me give you a quick example. Say you had to choose between the glorious, beautiful, talented, intelligent, humble king and Minh-Hieu. You wouldn't be able to choose between them. The reason is because they're both the same person. It's me. Alright, anyways, let's get back to the question. Wait, actually, there's something else I need to point out. If it's 2 things like in sequence of events, obviously you can't get rid of both of them. Does first and lastly mean the same thing? No, they don't. So you wouldn't be able to cross them out, even though they're in the same category. The main point is that they mean the same thing. And in stuff like addition and contrast, having the category helps you out a little bit. Now let's get back to the question. The first thing I like to do is identify what category each of the answer choices belong to. First up, we have furthermore, that is an addition transition word. By contrast, it's in the name, it's contrast. Similarly, I mean it literally means the word similar, but what's it called on here? It's a comparison word. And that is. It's not on this list, I already checked, but that is a restatement word. It's basically saying in other words. So that would be under clarification or restatement. Alright, now that we know all of these categories, first up, it's good practice because it gets it in your mind. And second thing is, technically you would be able to compare and see if 2 of them are in the same category. Unfortunately, none of them are, so we can't get rid of anything just yet. Well, I mean, all that's left now is to actually read the text and see what would make the most sense. Usually though, all you really need to read is the sentence before the blank, so that would be this one right here, and then the sentence with the blank or after the blank, and that would be this one right here. So let's start reading. In a heated debate in biogeography, the field is divided between dispersalist and Vicaria, whatever that is. Blank. There are those who argue that dispersal is the most crucial determining factor, and those who insist that Vicaria, whatever, is. So there's one important thing that you should notice here. They have the word dispersal here, and they have the word dispersal here. They have the word Vica whatever here, and the word Vica whatever here. Now, whenever a word ends in is, that means you're referring to a group of people. So, those who, that would be a group of people. Once again, is, those who, group of people. What I'm trying to point out is that they basically say the same thing twice. And what's it called when you repeat something? Well, it's called restating it. And which of our answer choices has a restatement transition word? The answer is D. Real quick, let's prove the others are wrong. A, we're not adding on new information. B, we're not saying 2 opposite things. C, we're not comparing 2 things. That's why it's not A, B, or C. But we are restating something. That's why it is D. Line number 10. Let's label our answer choices. Consequently, that is a cause and effect. I mean, a consequence of something, an effect of something. Alternatively, Now this could be a contrast or another option kind of transition word. Alternatively, you're giving an alternative, you're giving a different choice. But you could also use it like the word instead, where it could also kind of lean towards the contrasting side. Ultimately, this is a sequence of event kind of transition word, but really it just means at the end of the day. Sorry guys, low-key it's kind of sequence, but really it is also a summary or conclusion right here, ultimately. But in the context of that question, it was kind of sequence, and you'll see why as we answer the question. Additionally, that is obviously an addition word. Unfortunately, once again, none of them fall in the same category, so we can't get rid of anything just yet. All that's left now is to just start reading. So we want to read everything before the blank, and then everything after the blank, which ends up being the entire text. How exciting. When one looks at the dark craggy vistas in this person's photo series, one's mind might wander off to the cratered surfaces of faraway planets. Blank, it's the series title, Flying Frying Pan, that brings one back to Earth, reminding the viewer that each photo is actually a close-up view of a familiar household object, a frying pan. So before the blank, we're talking about how these pictures might make your mind wander off to faraway planets. And then after the blank, it's talking about how the series title brings you back to Earth. First up, is this cause and effect? No, it's not. Making your mind wander off to faraway planets is what brings you back to Earth? That does not make sense. Is it another option? No, we're not introducing a new option, so it can't be B. C. Now this one is a little bit tricky. I will tell you now that it is the answer, because if you were to plug it in, these photos make you think of faraway planets, but ultimately, in the end, at the end of the day, it's the series title that brings you back to Earth. That would make sense. So that's why C would be our answer. But of course, if you can't logic that out, we can just eliminate D because addition, are we adding on new info related to what's before it? No, we're not. We're talking about two different things. So that's why it wouldn't be D either. Now, we are talking about two different things, but still, it wouldn't be B because it's more of another option compared to being a contrast. Slide number 11. Let's take a look at our answer choices and categorize them. Regardless, that's going to be a, right here, contrasting word. Admittedly, that's also going to be a contrasting word. In other words, that is going to be a restatement right here. And lastly, meanwhile. Now meanwhile is also a little special. It can mean contrasting, but of course it can also be sequence because it can mean at the same time. Now you could say that my friends were out enjoying their spring break, meanwhile I was being a chud. That is contrasting because I'm talking about two different things, going out on spring break versus being a chud, but it also means at the same time because they both happen during spring break. So this can be contrast / sequence, or really just time. Now you should notice that finally we have two answer choices in the same category. A and B are both contrasting words, so we can get rid of both of them. Now D, also technically contrasting, can also be sequence. We're not going to get rid of it just yet. However, since it does lean towards contrasting, most likely our answer will be C. But let's check. Is our text restating something? Is it saying the same thing twice? We're going to look at our blank, we're going to read everything before, and then we're also going to read everything after. Aristotle disagreed, positing that knowledge is best obtained through direct engagement with the material world. Blank, sensory experience of the material is the ultimate source of knowledge. Alright, so here's Aristotle talking about direct engagement. If we look past the blank, sensory experience, both of those are related to the same idea. Here we have the word material. Here we have the word material. Would you look at that? He's saying the same thing twice, so it would make sense to use a restatement transition word. That means our answer will be C. Real quick, let's prove all the other answer choices are wrong. They're all contrasting. He's not contrasting. He's not saying two different things. He's actually saying the exact same thing. So that's why it would be restatement. Also, I just noticed, knowledge is best obtained. Ultimate source of knowledge, that also means the exact same thing. Slide number 12. Let's look at our answer choices and categorize them. Therefore, that is cause and effect. In fact, that is going to be emphasis. Moreover, that's addition. And though, that is going to be contrast. Oh frick. Unfortunately, last transition word question, and we do not have two answer choices in the same category. Honestly, what was I thinking when I made these questions? Why can't I have just chosen easier questions? Whatever. Anyways, there's nothing left we can do but just read it, so we're gonna read everything before the blank, and then everything after the blank. Even in this superficially traditional work, blank, this person was breaking new ground by memorializing an anonymous woman rather than a famous man. So here it says that normally this work is traditional, but this person was breaking new ground. These are two different ideas. These are two opposite things, which means we're contrasting. And of course, the only answer choice that has a contrast transition word is D. It's not cause and effect because we're going from traditional work to new work. Those are two different things and not cause and effect. We're not adding on emphasis, we're talking about a different thing. And we are adding on new information, but the thing with addition transition words is that it has to be on the same topic. It has to agree with whatever was said before it. In this case, it's saying something different, so it wouldn't make sense to use addition, but of course it would make sense to use contrast, so our answer is D. Alright, that concludes all the questions I have for reading tutorials on Domain 3, Expression of Ideas. If you would like to get more practice on harder questions, please check out my SAT doc. Real quick, let's see who is on it. Oh, it's Alexander Pham Lam. How exciting. Alright, anyways, let me quickly show you how to use it. Of course, you'd want to click on Reading and Writing. And then our third domain, Expression of Ideas. And just like our questions and slides, it's broken up by the topic. There's the questions, answer key, and a video going through all of the questions. I also have links to the set of transition words and a Quizlet on all the transition words inside of the SAT doc. Alright, that's gonna be it. Good luck studying, and I'll see ya. Min out.